hesitated. "But I've realized I could never be the sort of wife you need."
"What do you mean?"
"You said," she explained quietly, "when I was passed over for promotion that it didn't matter because I'd be giving up work anyway when we got married." He'd worked out by now that that had been a mistake.
"Then why did you leave, if your job means so much to you?"
This time Julia's anger was harder to suppress. "I did explain. They gave Darren my department that I'd built up for nearly 5 years, just because he's a man and plays golf. He's not even competent."
"But a lot of people prefer to deal with a man. And golf's not only about the game, you know. A lot of business—"
"I built up the lettings department without being a man or spending my spare time in the bar at the golf club."
"Well, they wouldn't let you in unaccompanied."
"I persuaded that Finnish company to use us to handle their relocation rather than one of the big Oxford firms."
"I know. Peter was very pleased to get the business. He told me."
"And did your golfing buddy also tell you why he didn't give me the department?"
"Only what he told you, darling."
Oscar, unnerved by Julia's anger, tried to pacify her.
"That he thought that while Darren was young, he had a lot of potential."
Julia concentrated on keeping calm. If she let herself think about what Oscar was saying, she'd explode and make a nasty mess on his leather upholstery. "This is all old ground, Oscar, and not getting us anywhere. But I think you must realize now that we're not suited." Seeing him about to prove her wrong, she hurried on. "There are lots of supergirls out there who would—" She faltered. Was there anyone willing to be a 1950s wife at the beginning of the new millennium? "Who would appreciate your many good qualities and recognize what a catch you are. You're very attractive and supremely eligible, Oscar. It's just me you're not right for." She picked up her handbag and fumbled for the door handle. He put out a hand to stop her getting out.
"And this canal business, what's that all about? You've walked out on a perfectly decent career, working for a very sound chap, and behaved very badly while you were about it, may I remind you?"
Julia wanted to laugh. At the time she'd been too angry, but in retrospect her departure from the office had had its funny side. Having heard her extremely toned-down version of her reasons for leaving, Peter had reached out across the desk to pat her, saying, "There, there." This patronizing gesture had knocked over his coffee mug, which had been full. Coffee had spread all over his desk, which he kept clear to prove how efficient he was, and onto his trousers. He'd been distraught. "This suit is brand new. My wife will go mad. Do something before it stains Julia, please." "Why don't you ask Darren?" she had replied coolly. "He's got a lot of potential."
"But he won't know anything about coffee stains," Peter had gone on. "He's a man."
"So he is.
Shame."
Julia had smiled with mock sympathy and walked out. Now she said mildly, "I don't think I behaved that badly. You can't blame me for not wanting to scrub away with tissues at Peter's crotch now, can you?"
"Don't change the subject. You know nothing about this woman, or canals for that matter."
"I'll know more about them both when I've had the interview. But I would have left strangers anyway. I'd been there too long."
6 years too long, she now realized. "You don't even know how much this woman is going to pay you. How will you make ends meet? Thought of that, have you?"
"Of course. I'm not an idiot." Julia bit back her irritation. "I shall let my house. That'll cover the mortgage and the bills. Whatever I get paid will just be pocket money."
"Pocket money? Huh."
"I'm young and single, Oscar. Well, youngish. I've got my feet on the housing ladder. So, as long as I can pay the mortgage, I don't need to earn vast amounts. Anyway, perhaps the pay is good." She thought this as unlikely as he did, but since neither of them actually knew, she thought she might as well say it.
"If people don't pay you, they don't value you.
I was paid well at Strangers, and what did that prove? But I don't value myself by my salary, and I don't expect anyone else to. Now, I really must go." This time she actually got the door open and her foot out before Oscar jumped in again. "My mother will be very disappointed about this. Very disappointed." "I think she'll be heartily relieved," said Julia, who had overheard an unflattering conversation about her age and her childbearing potential on the one occasion she and Oscar's mother had met. "This leaves you free to find someone younger and more biddable." Oscar flushed to hear his mother's words echoed. Julia kissed his cheek. "I'm sorry it didn't work out, Oscar, but I know I could never have made you happy. Not for long." Julia got out of the car and made her way into her house, feeling sad and guilty. Although she hadn't recognized it at the time, she reflected, it had been Oscar's inherent dullness and his heavenly Queen Anne house, she blushed with shame, which had made her agree to marry him. "I was just so tired all the time," she thought, putting on the kettle, "working my socks off getting the lettings department going." She'd spent hours on the phone to Finland, convincing a very high-tech firm that she had at her fingertips, in sleepy Oxfordshire, plenty of very high-class accommodation for its top executives, and more hours convincing people who owned said accommodation that their Cotswold gems would be safe in her hands. She'd set up a team of gardeners so no rose would go unpruned or bindweed unchecked, and even got a firm of furniture restorers ready to remove the merest scratch on the Chippendale furniture. She remembered now how scathing Darren had been when he discovered these details, saying it was a waste of time. She had had great satisfaction in telling him that anxieties about their chairs were what stopped a lot of people letting their property. He had just muttered about insurance and cast-iron contracts, as if Julia had never heard of them. Working such long hours had affected her social life, and Oscar, introduced to her by her boss, seemed pleasant and undemanding. His idea of fun, apart from a challenging game of golf, was taking Julia to excellent country restaurants and showing off his knowledge to the wine waiter. As he hardly drank at all himself, his classic Jaguar was as precious to him as his Labrador puppy, Julia found herself on the business end of some excellent vintages. Not requiring much in the way of conversation, Oscar was quite happy if Julia just nodded and murmured at him, and wasn't offended if she caught up on some much-needed sleep in the car on the way home. He had asked her to marry him when her mind had been on something quite else, and thus she had found herself engaged to a man she didn't really know at all, and who knew even less about her. Somehow, there'd never been time to get to know each other better, and Julia, still rushing about, began to see the prospect of a life of being well-fed and watered in a beautiful setting — Oscar had some wonderful antiques to go with the house — as rather attractive. But when the promotion that was hers by right was given to Darren, young, arrogant and inefficient, just because he was male, she realised she needed to do some serious reassessment, and, she also realised, downsizing. The Queen Anne house had 7 bedrooms. Working so hard had allowed her to make a serious error of judgment, and it wasn't worth it. Perhaps she should feel grateful to Peter Strange for inadvertently showing her the light. After she had stormed out of the office, she had bought a copy of The Lady in preparation for her new life. For although part of her wanted to fill a rucksack and go hitchhiking round India that very minute, another, better developed part wanted to earn some sort of living. Not even waiting to get home, she turned straight to the back pages and read as she walked, wondering why she had given so much of her life to a company like Strangers, who would always see women as little more than glorified secretaries, whatever they achieved. Narrowly avoiding a puddle and banging her hip on the garden gate, her excitement grew. Every situation vacant seemed like a shining window of opportunity.